Hello everybody, you're listening to the Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. This is the weekly-ish radio show where we chat about the local arts news. We have a different guest on each week. We head over to the Rhylight Zone for a short story and or some poetry, and we catch up with Twangling Jack Ford over in the Ilk Shed for a weekly album review. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for the Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. And we are repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a short review on your podcast platform of choice. You can also email me here at the studio on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. And I'm particularly keen to hear from poets, performers, musicians, people with MP3s that I'd like to share, people with local arts news. Don't hesitate to get in touch. I would love to hear from you. So this week we're going to be chatting to Sabiene North, who is the CEO of Be Free Young Carers, which is a charity based in Oxford. She's also a keen runner and a member of Vegan Runners, which is my running club. But before we catch up with Sabiene, we're going to head over to the we're going to head over to the Rhylight Zone for the latest instalment of Monsters of Rock by myself, Dane Cobain.
Steve Kendall had put the word out amongst a few friends and secured a troupe of backing dancers. They weren't exactly lookers though. They were the undead, a half-dozen zombie girls in their eternal mid-20s. Their faces had started to rot before they discovered the secret of formaldehyde, which was how Steve managed to look so fresh. Although it didn't help much when his fingers broke off. One or two of them were little more than animated skeletons, and the rigor mortis stopped them from swinging their hips around as much as the nymphs and the dryads could in the videos that aired on MTV. But they had a reasonable sense of rhythm, and they managed to sway from side to side during a few of the slower numbers. The gig at the Phoenix went well, but not as well as the shows at the Rose and Crown. Cedric's place was like a second home to them, and not just because they practiced in the back room. They knew half the punters by name and were always guaranteed a good reception. At the Phoenix, they were out-of-towners, and people had paid at the door to get in. Still, they gave Groen & Co a warm welcome and extended the benefit of the doubt, and Dark Nightmares went down particularly well. The loudest applause of the night came when the rest of the band took a tuning break while Yeva played a stripped-back version of Elixir, but if Groen was bothered by the Dark Elf stealing the spotlight, he didn't show it. In his mind, the Monsters were his band, which meant that he deserved all the credit, even if he didn't have a monopoly on the talent. March rolled into April, and the newspapers were filled with stories about America, where the feds had just made a move on David Koresh and his Branch Davidians. The complex had burned down with huge loss of life. Groen had wanted to write a song about it, but he decided against it because it felt insincere. He hadn't known any of the victims. He felt obliged to leave the grieving to their families. And besides, he had bigger things to think about than writing new material. He had to figure out how the hell he was going to bring the songs that they already had to life when they went into the recording studio. Several weeks later, the band was lurking in a damp basement in a house off the London Road. It belonged to a gnome friend of Groen's who'd fought in the Ore Wars. The gnome had fought for the Italians to begin with, but he'd switched his allegiance once he'd seen which way the wind was blowing, and he'd taken a bunch of secrets along with him. The British government had rewarded him with property and diplomatic immunity. They called him Crazy Dave, and he was known throughout the town for his rock and roll lifestyle. After the war, he'd been a taxi driver in the capital before getting involved in the punk scene of the 1970s. Rumour had it that Crazy Dave was the man who discovered Sid Vicious, as though Sid was a vein of gold in the mines that Groen called home. But for all that, he had a remarkably nondescript appearance. He just looked like a typical gnome, except for a piercing in one ear which trailed a long peacock feather down to his waist. Crazy Dave was a man of many talents, one of which was the ability to run an alternative music studio with an unusual vision. Groen hadn't worked with him before, but he'd heard some of the music that had come out from his basement, and he'd been impressed with the quality. The rest of the band had liked it too, and so they'd chipped in to cover the recording costs. The basement smelled of mould and mildew. It was also tiny, too small to fit more than 3 people in the room at once. Chris didn't fit in there at all, and he could barely poke his head through the narrow doorway. Crazy Dave had to run some extension cables through the gap so that Kuz could sit in the kitchen with the headphones and the XLR leads trailing back into the basement. It was an unusual setup and it took some time to perfect, but they made it work. Groen was in his element there beneath the floorboards, and Steve and Vlad didn't mind spending time in a room that reminded them of a crypt from a Hammer horror movie. But for Yeva Bankovskis, the situation was a nightmare. How am I supposed to make beautiful music when I'm being buried alive? Groen muttered something that sounded suspiciously like bloody elves beneath his breath, but then he fixed himself with his best smile and turned to face his keyboard player. "We're the real Monsters," he said. "We don't make beautiful music. We make music that people can tap their feet to." The two aren't mutually exclusive. Well, perhaps you're right, Groen conceded. He scratched his nose without realising it and then examined his fingernails as he moved his hands away from his face. They were dirty, ragged, and getting a little long. He put his thumb in his mouth and started to gnaw at it. Is it a deal breaker? Not necessarily, Yeva said. She sighed and drummed her fingernails against the palms of her hands. Groen noticed that she'd ditched her traditional black nail varnish in exchange for a deep crimson that looked like blood. It was a good look. I'll go down into that crypt if you really want me to. Perhaps there's no need, Groen replied. He stroked his beard thoughtfully and peered down into the basement. Let's see if Crazy Dave has another set of extension leads. You can stay up here with Kuz. Recording in Crazy Dave's studio had an unintended side effect. It forced the band to become better communicators, to anticipate the natural changes and fluctuations that came from minor improvisations in the songs that they played 100 times before. With Groen, Steve and Vlad in the basement, and Kuz and Yeva on the floor above them, they lost the visual clues that they'd been relying on and had to learn to trust the music. But it didn't come naturally, and so the first few days of recording produced nothing more fruitful than a couple of demos of some of the new tunes that Yeva had written in the back of her camper van. As demos, they were pretty good, but they weren't in Crazy Dave's basement to record a demo. They already had one. On the fourth day, it started to sound more like a recording session and less like an impromptu jam, and while they still ran through a dozen takes before they captured anything they liked, by the end of the day they had passable versions of Dark Nightmares and The Blacksmith, although they had more work to do on the backing vocals and Steve wasn't happy with his solo. On the fifth day, they finished Dark Nightmares and made a solid start on In the Hole and Broken Swords. By the end of the second week, their budget had been exhausted. It had actually been exhausted by the previous Wednesday, but Crazy Dave had begrudgingly agreed to do the rest of the project pro bono. Luckily for Groen and the band, they'd also finished recording their first ever 5-track EP, and all that was left was the mastering. It will take me a few days to get the balances right, the gnome said. I'll run off a couple of tapes and listen to it in the car. If I give it a few spins on the stereo, I'll be able to figure out what else needs doing. I'm surprised you can see over the dashboard, Groen said. You'll want to talk, the gnome replied. Said Kuz. As a troll, he wasn't quick on the uptake, and it was sometimes hard for him to tell whether Groen and Crazy Dave were arguing. It didn't help that their heads were just below crotch height. Relax, Groen said, flashing the famous Gonadson smile at the troll. Dave's a good man. A good gnome? Exactly, Groen said. I'm just giving him a hard time. He'll have the tapes for us when he's good and ready. Crazy Dave was living up to his name, wobbling to and fro with irrepressible energy. He looked like a kid who badly needed the toilet, but who was too scared to raise his hand to attract the attention of a teacher. You guys are pretty tight, he said. I'm impressed. Groen, I remember when you were first starting out. I'm not going to lie, you were terrible. But times have changed, bro. Thanks, Groen said, unsure of how to take the backhanded compliment. I tell you what though, Crazy Dave said, you guys are still missing something. Yeah? And what's that? You guys need a manager. I've heard this one before, Yeva said. She was leaning against the wall and staring absent-mindedly at her fingernails. You're going to say you know just the man for the job and you're going to put yourself forward. Are you crazy? Crazy Dave said. He was on to talk. It takes a certain type of person to be a manager. You need to be good with numbers and... Besides, my place is here in the studio. What's wrong with me running the show? Groen asked. Crazy Dave laughed so hard that Steve Kendall had to slap him on the back to make him stop, losing his hand in the process. He murmured a quick, sorry about that, and started the laborious task of stitching it back on again with his one remaining hand. What's so funny? It's nothing, the gnome said. Sure, Groen, you'll do for now. You've already lined up some shows and made it into my studio. But what about a couple of years down the line? What happens if you start talking contracts with a record company? Or if you decide you want to organise a tour? I'll figure it out, Groen said. You heard the troll, Crazy Dave said. He's not so sure. Seriously, Groen, you should think about it. You guys have a lot of potential and I'd hate to see it wasted. But you won't last long in this business without a manager. Groen opened his mouth to say something rash, but then he closed it again. He turned the idea over in his head and thought about it for a moment or two. I guess we'll see what happens, he said. It depends how good the mix sounds. Well, there won't be anything to worry about on that front, the gnome replied. Have you got a name for the EP yet? Sure, Groen said. We'll name it after the band. We'll call it The Real Monsters.
That was the latest instalment of Monsters of Rock by myself, Dane Cobain. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound, and this is Jordana Blake with U-Shaped Hole featuring Tim Pannell and Zach Moore.
Took me walking through the park, through the brambles, through the dark. And I still have the sky and a home. You say toss your ego in the sea. Don't want me, that's news to me. 'Cause I still live, I'm free in God. And I may shake
That was My Own Little Hell by Lunar Seas, and before that we had U-Shaped Hole featuring Tim Pannell and Zach Moore by Jordana Blake. I think I worded that weirdly. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound, and it's time for us to be joined now by this week's guest, who is Sabiene North of Be Free Young Carers.
Well, there's a few things I want to chat to you about today. The first thing is your work with Be Free Young Carers. So could you tell us a little bit about the organisation?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're a small charity based on Harwell campus, which is a big science park just up the road from us. And we cover the whole of Oxfordshire for supporting young carers. So they're children aged between 8 and 17 years old that also have the main caring role for either a parent or sibling. So it can be a child caring for a mum with mental health conditions, or it can be a child caring for a severely autistic brother. And we support them by providing respite activities. We've got a school holiday programme all planned out for them. So we do respite activities. We also do one-to-one emotional support. We do counselling for them, and we have a befriending service that are run by volunteers. We really just let them be children and support them in their role. It's not, obviously, I'd love us not to exist, because then young carers wouldn't exist, but that's not going to happen. So what we do is we try and support and advocate for them as much as we can.
Cool. And is there anything in particular that you think would surprise people about young carers? You know, maybe the number of them that there are, or some of the, some of the conditions that their parents might have that they're supporting with, some of the things they do?
Yeah, so I think the statistic for our county is that there's at least 2 young carers in every classroom in Oxfordshire, which is phenomenal. And there are young carers that might not know that they're young carers, so they will go about doing the job and role that they do, not knowing that that's not the norm for children to do. And they go unnoticed. They're normally quite well behaved in classrooms, but they're statistically, they're likely to be the most absentee group from school, most likely to be suspended, most likely not to receive any attainment when they go to secondary school. So yeah, the statistics are pretty shocking.
Yeah. And how can people get involved? I mean, I'm sure you're looking for, as you mentioned, some of the volunteering opportunities. So from both a volunteering and a fundraising point of view, how can people get involved with you guys?
Yeah, so there's so many opportunities. With regards to volunteering, we've got the Abingdon Marathon aid station we're doing this weekend coming. People can get involved with that. We're setting up our employability program, so people with skills in their employment can help give back to those children that don't necessarily have the same advantages that we have. So for work experience placements, and interviewing techniques, CV writing, skills like that they can give to a young carer are vital, because normally it's the parent that nurtures the child on their career journey, and if their parents are cared for, they don't necessarily have the business contacts or anything like that. So that's one way of getting involved. We've also got fundraising. So this weekend just gone, we've had the Oxford Half. We sometimes get London Marathon places. So there's a lot of running. Obviously, that's one of my loves as well. But there's loads of ways that they can get involved with our befriending service or volunteering on our school holiday programme. Yeah. So if they go to our website, which is www.befreeyc.org.uk, there's more details of how you can get involved from there. Yeah.
Cool. And in terms of funding, obviously, donations are going to play a huge role. Do you go after funding grants and things like that as well? What does the fundraising process look like?
Yeah, so I came across as the fundraiser originally. I'm now the CEO. Unlike most charities, we don't get any statutory support. So a lot of charities like your local Mind office will get money from the NHS. Your local hospice will get statutory funding. We don't get any support like that. So we're fully funded on donations or grants that we apply for. It can be really tricky because you don't know where your income's going from 1 month to the next. But in a positive way, it can be really great, because in with the pandemic in lockdown, we saw small charities like Be Free being able to pivot really quickly, drop everything, change direction, get our programs online. Whereas the larger charities, the ones that are in contracts with the county council or NHS, they're very tied up in bureaucracy. So we're able to pivot, change, and meet the needs of our young carers very quickly.
Cool. And who else is on the team there with you, and what do they do?
Oh, right, okay. I will walk you through who we've got. We've got Hannah, who's our head of fundraising. She came across as our fundraiser and got quickly promoted to head of fundraising. We've got Mandy, who is one of our fundraisers, and she has a corporate background, so she is phenomenal at getting large corporates on board and doing the stewardship on that side. We've recently got Finley, who is an apprentice fundraiser. And he used to be one of our young carers, so he's come through all our services and now went off to university, and he's come back to join us as a fundraiser. We have Callum, who heads up our volunteers. So we have volunteers as in trustees, but we also have volunteers that come out on our trips. And then we've got our befriending service. So Callum manages all of that. Then we have our youth worker team, frontline services. So we have Victoria, who heads up our frontline services, so she is our operational manager. We then have our youth workers, who are just phenomenal. They do an amazing job. They go out to schools, they run all our school holiday programs, they register our young carers and assess them for what their caring role are. So we've got I'm just going to make sure I don't leave anyone out. We've got Gemma, we've got Lorraine, we have got Nicola, we've got Carly, we've got Tabby, and we have Rihanna that supports all our young carers. So yeah, they're great. They're great, yeah.
And I wanted to ask you about some of your success stories. So you mentioned Finley. Are there any other kind of standout stories that that kind of spring to mind?
Yeah, we have. I mean, one of my things I feel really guilty about is when they get to 17 and they reach the age of 18, they go into adult services. So we don't have a transition program, but what we like to do is try and keep them as part of our network, as it were. And it's when they get that much older they can look back on their caring roles. So we have one particular young carer called Case, who has been with us since she was just turned 8, and she's now 18, and she's looking at becoming a trustee for us. So it's getting that young carer's voice on the board of trustees. We also have phenomenal young carers that advocate in schools for us. One of our young carers went up to Parliament and sat on the APPG, which is the first for young carers, and I think he's the first of his age to go up there. I think he was 14 at the time, and he spoke on national TV about his young carer role and the role of Be Free. So yeah, we're incredibly proud of our young carers. Oh, and one of them is the Children's Commissioner of England. We supported our young carer, Maya, in her application to become the ambassador for the Children's Commissioner of England. So she sits with her and advocates for young carers there.
Cool, awesome. And this one's a bit of a selfish question. So I'm not sure if you know, but I've recently started work at Wickham Homeless Connection as a volunteer coordinator. So my question for you there is, what would your advice be for someone like me who's moving into the charity sector?
To look after yourself. You can't look after other people until you really prioritize your own mental health, which can be really difficult, especially with the roles that we have. You're obviously doing the job because you care and you want to make a difference, and sometimes we give too much of ourselves. But I would be giving you the advice to network as much as you can. Networking is really key for us to raise awareness, but also to raise the vital funds that we need. And I honestly don't think there's any better sector that can deal with things that have been thrown at us. We've had the cost of living crisis, the pandemic, and throughout all of that, it has been the charity sector that have met demand, that meets the gaps that aren't filled by local government. So yeah, I'd say to enjoy it as well, because it's a really rewarding job.
Yeah.
You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. I'm here in conversation with Sabiene North of Be Free Young Carers, and this is the Sepia Tone Folk Collective with I'm Not Really Here.
Okay, let's go. Life can seem a vicious game, and you know love is just the same. Lay down your cards, give it a try. Can you see the girl with me? Well, she ain't my property, just don't come and ask me why. I'm tired of all their prying eyes, and I'm bored of all the lies and the gossip that I hear. I'll sage love songs just for you, lyrics you can misconstrue and hear what you want to hear. I gave you what I had inside, then watched you take me for a ride, though I tried to be sincere. I'm tired of your lying eyes, and I'm bored of all the sighs and the tears when you're near. But if you're ever feeling down, you know I'll always be around. I can't seem to stay away, so go. You must let go of my hand. You're not my woman, I'm not your man. There's a kindness being cruel. You'll go and try and play this cool. Ignore your heart, play by the rules, then it's me that feels the fool. I'm sick and tired of my disguise, so I'll just say my goodbyes and then slowly disappear. 'Cause I'm not really here, 'cause I'm not really here, I'm not really here.
That was I'm Not Really Here by the Sepia Tone Folk Collective. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. And it is time for us to be rejoined in conversation now by this week's guest, who is Sabiene North of Be Free Young Carers.
Well, I certainly relate as well to what you were saying about in an ideal world, you almost wouldn't exist. And certainly with the night shelter kind of, which is sort of, you know, your making sure people have got somewhere warm to sleep in winter. Ideally, you don't want it to get to the point where you have to have a night shelter. So, you know, if you can, it's that whole prevention is better than the cure kind of thing. So, but yeah, no, that was great advice. So, and I want to kind of build on what you were saying there as well about looking after yourself, because I want to talk to you about running and sort of your sort of fitness journey as well. Could you tell us a little bit about that and how did you get started with your passion for running?
So I lost an incredible amount of weight. These were in the years before all the jabs and everything that have been coming across. I did it through diet and hard work. I didn't start exercising until I lost the weight, and then a friend said that, you know, why don't we try Couch to 5K? And I was thinking, okay, let's give that a go. I can remember the first time my friend Kate ran down to the bottom of the road with me, and then we ran back, and it's like half a mile. And I had my husband waiting on the front doorstep with my asthma inhalers, and I was like, oh God, this is so hard. But then you download the app and you do your Couch to 5K, and the more you do, the easier it gets. And I just think that's why I don't stop now, because I think couch to 5K was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And if I stopped, I'd have to do it again at some point. I don't really relish that. So yeah, running's just so good for mental health. Being outside as well. I used to have a treadmill, and we got rid of that fairly recently because I think I only used it once or twice. So yeah, getting outside in all of the elements, you know, different weathers, going different places, meeting different people, but also the running community. I mean, you must find it as well.
Yeah.
Especially with like vegan runners, you can't go to a race without seeing someone that's part of your team, as it were. So yeah, it's incredibly, really ticks the box for mental health. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to ask you there, you know, you mentioned vegan runners. Can you tell us about the running clubs you belong to?
Yeah, so I when I was doing the couch to 5K, and you know, we me and a friend got up to 10K, we ran past someone who said hello to us as he was running. His name was, well, is Daniel Blount, and he had a Harwell Harriers running top on. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to give that a go. So I looked up their details and I started to train with them. And they're a really inclusive club. They're, yeah, really fantastic people to be around. And just having that regular slot in the diary when Tuesday, Thursday nights were my training nights, I'd go out and I'd meet up with other people and run with them was really good. And then I became within a year, I became chair of Harwell Harriers, and we grew the club, and that was just absolutely fantastic. Excuse me, I stepped down a few years ago, and it's just gone on from strength to strength. It's really, yeah, phenomenal club. And then I found vegan runners. I think one of my friends who was part of the club was a vegan runner, and I just liked everything they stood for and liked how they sounded, and signed up. I obviously do the exercise classes that they have on a Sunday. They have a yoga online. And like I say, when you go to any race, you're guaranteed there's going to be a vegan runner. The Oxford Half, there was, it's put me in touch with so many different vegans on Instagram, on social media. And there was one that I ran for charity, which is always Huntington's disease or Be Free. And there was someone from Huntington's Disease Association, and she is also a vegan runner. And I saw her for the first time in person at the Oxford Half at the weekend. It's just a sense of community. And then Harwell Harriers is very much a training club. You go there, you run. There's the social aspect as well, but you know, you're there for a purpose to improve. A local bakery near us that is also a social enterprise called Proof, and they rehabilitate ex-offenders and employ ex-offenders in this bakery, and they also make amazing food. And we started a social run club from there. So every Thursday morning at 8 a.m, going from the centre of Oxford, you go for a nice 4-mile run with them, and then you come back and you have a croissant, vegan croissant. The vegan baking is absolutely amazing there. And that's a really nice social run for me. And there's no judgment. They just, you know, they hold the gates open for you. You know, no one's in a rush. It's just a really nice environment to be in. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. And I wanted to ask, like, what's your reason behind being vegan, and how long have you been vegan?
I was vegetarian for years, absolute years, and I'd always been interested in obviously animals, and I didn't like the animal cruelty. I'm a big animal lover. I've got 2 dogs. I've always had cats, rabbits. And it wasn't until I started looking into like the dairy industry, and the impact that has and the cruelty there. And I just thought, do you know what? I don't want to be a part of that. There was an event where my cat passed away sadly, and I was with her when she went, and it really had a huge impact on me. And I didn't want any animal to go through that, what I saw her go through. It wasn't nice. And so yeah, I do it for those reasons really. I've been a vegan for a good probably 3 to 4 years. I contacted someone else from another running club who was on Instagram, and I knew her from Park Run, and I said, how, it's January, coming up to January. I was like, I'm going to give it a go. And I was just asking her questions constantly. So I was saying, what do you do for this? What do you do for this? And she was so helpful. And, even still is today. So I just went for it, and haven't looked back since. It's been really easy. I think it's probably the vegans that have been a long time vegan. Now everything seems to be very orientated plant-based, and a lot more accessible products, whereas I think 20-30 years ago that just wasn't about. So it's a lot more easier now.
Cool, awesome. And so just a couple more questions to end on. One, I want to ask about Abingdon Marathon, because you're running in that, right?
Oh, I was. Sadly, I'm not anymore. I did Race the Stones, or attempted Race the Stones in July, and it's the hottest day of the year. I got halfway, and I had, even a few weeks before that, I got a hip injury. So I thought I'll try Race the Stones, give it a go. Didn't really succeed there. So Abingdon has taken I've had to transfer my place. But I am doing the Abingdon aid station again. That's where I saw you. Was that last year?
It is, yeah. That was my first marathon as well.
Oh yeah. So I'll have the same aid station. On there we'll be supporting vegan runners, but also Harwell Harriers and any other runner that runs past us there. So I'll be doing that. But I do have an ultra planned at the end of the year. So I'm just slowly getting back into it. I don't want to put too much pressure on my injury that it gets worse. But at the moment, fingers crossed, it's looking good.
Awesome. Well, that leads me nicely in, because I want to, basically, we're going to end by talking about the future. So you've kind of covered your running plans a little bit there. What's next for Be Free Young Carers, sort of maybe over the next couple of years, and what's your long-term vision for the next 10 plus years, if you have one?
So at the moment we are in the middle of an expansion plan, and we're looking to go north of Oxfordshire. So we're hoping to do that next September. So we're looking to expand north of Oxfordshire, and then I guess we're going to try and consolidate all our services and make sure what we're doing is really what young carers want from us. So you'll see some more advocating from us, more liaising with schools to try and get them to identify young carers better, and a lot more support. So we're hoping to expand our fundraising team, expand our services north of Oxfordshire. So there's a lot planned.
Cool. And you mentioned it again, but do you want to give one last shout out to the website, the social media? Where can people follow to support the organisation?
So it's www.befreeyc.org.uk. That will get to our website. We're on Instagram, which is BeFreeYC, and the same on Facebook. So it's BeFree, and we're on the socials.
Big thank you to Sabiene North for joining me. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wycombe Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is the Slim Harpo Project with Dynamite.
All you do is light my fuse. When I explode, baby, gonna blow away your blues. I'll be your handyman, baby. I work from sun to sun. I'll be your handyman, baby. Work from sun to sun. Yeah, I'm gonna leave my job, baby, till my work is done. every night, every day. I couldn't be happy any other way. It must be love, love, love. It must be love, love, love. Every night, every day, I know that it's you I need to take the blues away. It must be love, love, love. It must be love, love, love. Thank you, we've been the Cardinals.
Diana Ross and the Supremes, 20 Golden Greats. When we were young, I was into rock music and my brother was into soul. He had a copy of this album. His was probably from a jumble sale because it was quite beaten up. I heard and fell in love with the Vanilla Fudge version of You Keep Me Hanging On, so I borrowed his copy to check out the original, and I never gave it back. It sat in my collection of Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Black Sabbath and Pink Floyd, and it sparked my interest in Motown, Stax and all the other 1960s soul music. I had heard the songs on this album before, but I had never really listened to them. Listening to this album, I was able to understand how that beat made my contemporaries jump and twirl the night away on sprung dance floors in northern England. I could also see why bass players of my acquaintance raved about the solid pumping bass that could also be quite melodic in its own right. Like the bass line of You Can't Hurry Love that inspired gangs of mod bands, not least The Jam. Also there are the chiming xylophones, the electric pianos, the swirling organ and deep saxes bolstering the beat and playing solos, all like a blueprint for the E Street Band. To hear all this you have to listen quite carefully, because it is very much in the background behind the smooth lead vocal of Diana Ross and the perfect counter melodies and oohs and ahs of the Supremes. It is a big sound, but each element is distinct, unlike Phil Spector's wall of sound. Anyone who recorded music in the 80s will remember the obsession with the snare drum, but Motown had it perfected in the mid-60s. It is a crisp thwack, backed up with tambourine, playing four to the bar with plenty of rolls that point the way to the next sonic delight. I think a perfect example of how you do backing vocals is when the Supremes sing Don't Throw Our Love Away behind Diana singing Baby Love. And that song also has a key change that will give you goosebumps. Baby Love, You Can't Hurry Love and Where Did Our Love Go will always make you smile and always make you tap your feet. It was the songs that I only faintly remembered that struck me both back in the day and now listening to this copy that I actually searched quite hard to get. Songs like Reflections, which is a taste of the psychedelic summer of love. But the song that most had me hooked was The Happening, another hit from 1967. It has a sort of unresolved feeling to it, with a melody that goes all over the place. The Happening is unfeasibly bouncy. Then there is the Morse code type lead on You Keep Me Hanging On, which must have inspired Bowie's Starman. The later songs seem to lose the exuberance of the earlier ones. There are more strings and fewer big drum rolls. They even try to introduce a bit of funk, but it all gets a bit middle of the road. It ends though with the gloriously optimistic One Day We'll Be Together. The album is also a great tribute to Holland Dozier and Holland, who wrote 15 of the 20 songs, all the good ones. Diana Ross and the Supremes, 20 Golden Greats.
Big thank you to Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review. Thank you to Sabiene North for being this week's guest. Thank you to everyone whose music I've shared. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. And we are repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a short review on your podcast platform of choice. It all helps. You can also reach out to me here at the studio by dropping me a line on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. So, I'm going to leave you with one last tune, and this is Caitlin McAvoy with Beautiful. I'll catch you next week.
Wide hips, small waist, hip dips, no faith. Beauty should cause no hate. Too short, too tall, too fat, too thin. Don't let them make you fall apart. The media's lies. You need bigger thighs, must fit a smaller size. Let's disconnect. One day they'll accept no love and no respect. Don't change, you're perfect. Just know you're worth it. Shouldn't have to feel the shame. At night she's crying from all her fighting to look like all the other girls. Beauty is pain, it's all they'll ever say. Don't waste away. Don't let your mind define, you will shine. You're beautiful. More than my curves, look at my work. Perfection causes nerves. Don't make a disguise to please all the guys. You don't need to hide. Don't change, you're perfect. Just know you're worth it. Shouldn't have to feel the shame. At night she's crying from all her fighting to look like all